The smoke was so thick, she could not see her own hands. The ceiling was dripping fire. The walls were screaming. And somewhere in that inferno, her 3-week-old twins were crying for their mother. Rachel Dawson crawled through hell that night. She grabbed her babies from their cribs while the flames licked at their blankets. She ran to the front door, locked. Back door, locked. Every window sealed shut. And then she saw something that stopped her heart. Her husband, standing in the driveway, phone in his hand, face completely calm, and beside him stood her best friend of 15 years, smiling. Rachel screamed for help. She begged, she pleaded. Her husband looked at her, looked at his dying sons. Then he got in his car with that woman and drove away. He left them to burn. But here's the thing about Rachel Dawson. She did not die. And for the next 3 years, while her husband collected $2.3 million in insurance money, while he married his mistress, while everyone called Rachel crazy and delusional and took her children away from her, she was building a case, piece by piece, witness by witness, until the day she walked into that courtroom and watched his face turn white. What happened next changed everything. Value statement. Why this story matters. This is not just a story about betrayal and revenge. This is a survival guide for every woman who has ever been gaslit by someone she loved. For every mother who has been told she is crazy when she knows the truth. For every person sitting alone at 3 a.m, wondering if they have the strength to keep fighting. Rachel's story proves something powerful. The system may fail you. The people closest to you may betray you. The world may call you insane, but your truth is still true, even when no one believes it. And some women do not burn, they rise. The smoke was so thick I could not see my own hands. The ceiling dripped fire. The walls screamed with heat. And somewhere in that inferno, my 3-week-old twins were crying for their mother. My name is Rachel Dawson. I was 34 years old, a high school English teacher in Knoxville, Tennessee, a wife of 12 years, a mother of 3 weeks, and I was about to learn that the man I loved had tried to murder me. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. 6 weeks before my husband locked me in a burning house and drove away with my best friend. The nursery smelled like baby powder and hope. I stood between 2 white cribs, watching my sons sleep. Noah on the left, always sprawled like a starfish. Lucas on the right, curled tight like he was still in the womb. 3 weeks old, premature but healthy, perfect in every way that mattered. My miracle boys. 8 years I had waited for them. 3 miscarriages that shattered me. 2 rounds of IVF that left us $17,000 in medical debt. 1 devastating appointment where a doctor looked at me with pity and said the words no woman wants to hear. You may never carry a pregnancy to term. But I did. Against all odds, against all expectations, I did. And now they were here, breathing softly in matching cribs, and I felt like the luckiest woman alive. I was not perfect. I knew that. I drove a 12-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. I stress-ate chocolate at 2 a.m. and had gained 40 pounds since my wedding. I made $42,000 a year, teaching teenagers about Shakespeare, and could not afford the fancy stroller all the other moms in my neighborhood had. But standing in that nursery, watching my babies sleep, none of that mattered. I had everything I ever wanted, or so I thought. The front door opened downstairs. Heavy footsteps. The familiar smell of my husband's cologne drifting up the staircase, mixed with something else. Something floral. Jasmine, maybe. Jason appeared in the nursery doorway. 6'2", former college quarterback at the University of Tennessee, still handsome at 36, with the kind of smile that made my friends jealous, when we started dating in high school. We were sweethearts since sophomore year, married at 22. The couple everyone said would last forever. They were wrong. He crossed the room and wrapped his arms around me from behind. I leaned into him, feeling safe, feeling grateful, ignoring the tiny voice in my head that kept asking questions I did not want to answer. Questions like, why did he smell like jasmine perfume when his office was 40 minutes from the nearest department store? Questions like, why did our savings account drop by $12,000 last month with no explanation? Questions like, why did he flinch every time his phone buzzed? I pushed the questions away. I had been doing that for months. I was so desperate to believe in my happy ending that I ignored every red flag waving in my face. If you are listening to this and something feels off in your relationship, trust that feeling. I did not, and it almost cost me everything. That night, after Jason fell asleep, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket. A jewelry store, $800. My birthday was not for 3 months. Our anniversary had passed 2 months ago. I held the receipt and felt my stomach clench. Then, I told myself it was probably an early birthday surprise. Maybe he was just being romantic. Maybe I was being paranoid. I threw the receipt away. I did not ask questions. I would regret that choice for the rest of my life. Kate Sullivan arrived the next morning with coffee and donuts, her blonde hair perfect, her smile warm, her designer bag probably worth more than my monthly salary. She had been my best friend since freshman year of high school. 20 years of shared history, inside jokes, and secrets. She was there when my father died. I was there when her first marriage imploded. She was godmother to my twins. She helped plan my baby shower. She cried when I finally got pregnant after years of heartbreak. She was also sleeping with my husband, but I did not know that yet. Kate cooed over the babies while I made breakfast. Normal best friend behavior. Except I noticed her eyes drift toward the window when Jason's car pulled into the driveway. I noticed the way her hand trembled slightly when he walked into the kitchen. I noticed the look that passed between them. Quick as lightning, gone before I could identify it. You okay? I asked her. Fine, she said. Just tired. Work has been crazy. Kate worked at Jason's insurance agency. Had for 3 years since her divorce, left her broke and desperate. Jason offered her a job. I thought it was generous. Here's what I learned too late. When your husband offers your best friend a job, pay attention to why. And when your best friend takes it, pay attention to how she looks at him when she thinks you are not watching. But I was too trusting, too desperate to believe the best in people. My mother always said that was my weakness. She was right. While I slept that night, exhausted from midnight feedings, my husband was drowning. Jason Dawson owed $340,000 to a gambling syndicate with connections to organized crime. He had been skimming money from his own insurance agency for 3 years, staying one step ahead of auditors, one step behind his debts. His business partner, Derek Cole, had figured it out 6 months earlier. Derek was blackmailing him. 20,000 here, 30,000 there, slow strangulation disguised as friendly loans. And Kate was pregnant, 8 weeks along. She had given Jason an ultimatum the month before. Leave Rachel. Or I go to the police with everything I know about your financial crimes. Your choice, baby. Her or me? Jason sat at his desk that night, staring at the life insurance policies spread before him. Rachel Dawson, $1.5 million through the school district, $800,000 through the agency, total value, $2.3 million. His phone buzzed. Text from Kate. I found a way. Electrical fire. Faulty wiring. Happens all the time in old houses. No one will suspect anything. We can be together. Finally. Forever. Jason stared at that message for a long time. His wife was upstairs, sleeping peacefully, trusting him completely, His sons were in their cribs, 3 weeks old, innocent, helpless, and he was about to make a choice that would define him as a monster. The man I married died, somewhere in his gambling addiction, his affair, his desperation. The man who tried to kill me was someone I never really knew at all. Looking back, I realized my husband stopped being human long before that night, but I had no idea. I was too busy being grateful, too busy being happy, too busy ignoring every sign that my perfect life was built on lies. The countdown had begun. 6 weeks until the fire. 6 weeks until I would crawl through hell to save my children. 6 weeks until I would learn what betrayal really meant. Kate Sullivan had been waiting 16 years for this moment. She sat in a motel room 30 miles outside of Knoxville, the sheets tangled around her body, Jason lying beside her. Through the thin curtains, afternoon light painted stripes across the bed. "I am pregnant," she said. Jason's face went white. "What?" "8 weeks. I took 3 tests." Kate watched him process the information, watched the fear flicker across his face, watched him calculate, as he always did, what this meant for him. She had known Jason Mitchell since high school, had dated him first, actually, sophomore year, before Rachel transferred in from Nashville. They were together for 3 months. 3 perfect months where Kate finally felt like she mattered. Then Rachel arrived. New girl, shy smile, big brown eyes that looked at the world like it was full of wonder instead of disappointment. Jason dropped Kate like yesterday's newspaper. "We are just better as friends," he said. "You understand, right?" Kate understood. She understood that she was not pretty enough, soft enough, good enough. She understood that Rachel got everything Kate wanted just by existing. She spent the next 16 years understanding. She stood beside Rachel at her wedding, smiling for the cameras, while something inside her curdled into poison. She held Rachel's babies at the baptism while imagining what it would feel like if they were hers instead. And 3 years ago, when her own marriage fell apart, she took a job at Jason's insurance agency. Not because she needed the money, because she wanted to be close to him, to remind him what he gave up, to wait for her chance. The office Christmas party 2 years ago gave her that chance. Too much wine, a slow song, Jason's hand on her lower back. "I never stopped thinking about you," he whispered. "You know that, right?" "Then why did you choose her? Because I was 17 and stupid, because she was safe and you were dangerous." Kate had kissed him. He kissed her back. And that was the beginning. Now she sat up in the motel bed, letting the sheet fall away from her body. "Here is what is going to happen," she said. "You are going to leave Rachel. You are going to marry me, and we are going to raise this baby together." "It is not that simple," Jason said. "It is exactly that simple. I have been your dirty little secret for 2 years. I have watched you go home to her every night. I am done. The twins were just born. I cannot just leave. You can and you will. Unless you want me to tell Rachel everything about us, about the gambling, about the money you have been stealing from your own company." She watched his face change, fear replacing confusion, calculation replacing fear. Kate Sullivan was not a stupid woman. She knew exactly what she was doing. "There is no money," Jason said finally. "Even if I left tomorrow, I am broke. Worse than broke. I owe people. Dangerous people. Then get the money. How?" "I have already taken everything I can from the company. Derek knows. He is bleeding me dry." Kate was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question she had been waiting to ask for weeks. "What about the insurance?" "What insurance?" "Rachel's life insurance. Through the school. 1.5 million, plus whatever you have on her privately." Jason's blood ran cold. "What are you saying?" Kate met his eyes. No hesitation. No guilt. I am saying accidents happen. Fires happen, especially to exhausted mothers with newborn babies. She falls asleep with a candle burning. Faulty wiring in an old house. These things are tragic, but they are not suspicious. You are talking about killing my wife. I am talking about starting our life together. The life we were always supposed to have. Do you not want that? Do you not want me? Kate moved closer, her hand sliding up his thigh. $2.3 million. A fresh start. Our baby growing up with a father who actually wants to be there. All you have to do is be brave enough to take it. Jason closed his eyes. Her or me? Kate smiled. She had finally won. Over the next 4 weeks, Kate and Jason planned my murder with the precision of a military operation. Kate handled the logistics. She was always the careful one. Disconnect the smoke detectors gradually over several days. Remove the batteries one at a time. Blame it on dead batteries when Rachel notices the silence. Loosen the gas line behind the stove. Not enough to smell, but enough to accelerate when the fire starts. Make it look like an aging pipe finally gave way. Seal the windows with heavy-duty screws, disguised as childproofing. New parents do that. Safety precautions for when the babies start crawling. Install deadbolts on every door that can be locked from outside. Extra security for the new family. Jason handled the alibi. A business dinner with Derek and 2 potential clients on the night of the fire. Multiple witnesses who would confirm he was nowhere near the house. Restaurant staff who would remember the charming insurance agent who ordered dessert and left a generous tip. Kate would be home alone, ready to receive the devastating phone call. They chose a date, March 14th, a Saturday. My sister Megan would be out of town at a conference. The neighbors were going to a wedding in Nashville, the perfect night for a tragedy. My sister Megan never trusted Jason. She could not explain it. He had always been polite, charming, the perfect brother-in-law on the paper. But something about him made her skin crawl, the way his smile never quite reached his eyes. The way he looked at me sometimes, not with love, but with something closer to calculation. 1 week before the fire, Megan called me. Hey, can we talk? Sure. What is up? Megan hesitated. How do you tell your sister that something feels wrong without sounding crazy? It is probably nothing. But at the baby shower, I saw Kate acting weird. She was on the phone with someone, talking about the 14th. It seemed off. I laughed. The 14th is Saturday. She is probably planning something for Jason's birthday next month. You know how she is with surprises. Yeah, probably. Meg, I love you, but you have got to stop looking for problems. Kate has been my best friend for 15 years. She is the godmother of my children. Whatever you think you saw, I am sure it is nothing. Megan wanted to push harder. She wanted to beg me to be careful. Instead, she said, You are right. I am being paranoid. Sorry. We said goodnight. Megan hung up and stared at the phone in her hand. She should have pushed. She should have driven to my house. She should have done something. Instead, she went to bed. She would never forgive herself for that choice. And neither would I. March 14th arrived like any other Saturday. I spent the day caring for the twins, feeding them, changing them, rocking them back to sleep when they fussed. By 6 in the evening, I was exhausted in a way that lived in my bones. I finished the final feeding and settled Noah and Lucas into their cribs. Noah fussed for a moment, his tiny face scrunched with displeasure, but Lucas was already asleep. I stood between them, one hand in each crib, feeling their tiny chests rise and fall. My boys, my whole world. Jason appeared in the doorway, dressed in a suit. I have got that dinner with Derek. Big client. Might run late on a Saturday. I know, I am sorry. He crossed the room and kissed my forehead, lingered for just a moment. I love you, all three of you. I love you too. He walked out. I heard his car start, pull away. I did not know he would be back in 4 hours with accelerant and a mission. At 8:30, I took a shower. My first real shower in days. I stood under the hot water and let myself cry. Not from sadness, but from exhaustion and hormones and the overwhelming weight of new motherhood. I thought about calling Megan, thought about admitting that I was struggling, that the babies were harder than I expected, that something felt wrong in my marriage, but I could not name it. Instead, I dried off, put on pajamas, and fell asleep on the couch with the baby monitor in my hand. At 10:47, the explosion woke me. Not gradually, not gently. One second I was dreaming about something ordinary, and the next second I was on the floor, my ears ringing. My living room transformed into hell. Fire everywhere, crawling across the ceiling like something alive, eating the walls, breathing heat that stole the air from my lungs. And through the roar, the sound that would haunt me forever, my babies screaming. Noah, Lucas. I scrambled to my feet and ran toward the nursery. The hallway had become a tunnel of flame. The carpet melted under my bare feet, sticking to my skin, burning. The ceiling dripped fire. The smoke was so thick I could not see my hands in front of my face. I crawled. I prayed. I screamed my sons' names. The nursery door was hot enough to blister my palms when I pushed it open. Inside, smoke swirled around the cribs. The mobile was melting, dripping plastic onto the blankets. But they were alive, screaming, choking, terrified. But alive. I grabbed them both, wrapped them in my nightgown, pressed them against my chest so hard I was afraid I might hurt them. Mama's got you. Mama's got you. Front door. I yanked the handle until my hands bled. Locked. Back door. The deadbolt was engaged from outside. I could see it through the window, mocking me. Kitchen window. Sealed shut with heavy screws. Childproofing, Jason had called it last week. He was sealing my tomb. Garage door. Nailed shut. The repairs he did the week before. He was not fixing anything. He was making sure I could not escape. The smoke was getting thicker. The babies were coughing, choking, their screams growing weaker. I learned something that night that every mother knows in her bones. There is nothing you will not do for your children. Fire cannot stop you. Fear cannot stop you. Death itself cannot stop you. My eyes landed on the iron lamp base on the end table. Heavy, solid, decorative, a weapon. I set the babies on the couch, just for a moment, just long enough. I grabbed the lamp and swung it at the window frame with everything I had. Once, the wood cracked. Twice, splinters flew. 3 times, the frame gave way. The opening was high. The edges were jagged glass. The gap was barely big enough for my body. I did not think. I acted. I wrapped Noah in one blanket, Lucas in another, and pushed them through first. Lowered them onto the grass as gently as I could with arms that were shaking, burning, failing. Then I climbed through. The glass sliced my arms, my legs, my face. I felt my flesh tear, my blood run hot, mixing with sweat and soot. I did not care. I fell onto the lawn, crawled to my babies, gathered them in my arms. They were crying. They were breathing. They were alive. Thank God. Thank God. Thank God. And then I looked up. A car was parked at the end of the driveway, Jason's car. He was standing beside it, phone in hand, face illuminated by the flames. His expression was not panicked, not horrified, not desperate to save his family. His expression was calm, calculating, almost disappointed, and stepping out of the passenger seat was a woman, blonde hair catching the firelight, red lipstick, a familiar silhouette. Kate? Jason! I screamed. Help us! The babies! Jason looked at me, looked at his sons coughing in my arms, looked at the house burning behind us. Kate leaned close and whispered something in his ear. Her hand touched his arm, possessive, familiar. Jason nodded. He got in the car. Kate slid into the passenger seat, and they drove away. I collapsed on the grass, my children clutched to my chest, and understood everything. My husband had just tried to murder me. My best friend had helped him plan it, and they had left us to die. The fire did not destroy me. The fire showed me who my husband really was. And knowing that truth, as devastating as it was, gave me something I needed to survive. What came next? It gave me rage. I held my babies and watched the taillights disappear into the darkness. I listened to the sirens growing closer. I felt the heat of my burning home against my back. And I made a promise. I would survive this. I would prove what they did, and I would make them pay, no matter how long it took, no matter what it cost. They had tried to burn me alive. They had no idea what they had created. I woke in the burn unit 3 days later. My arms were wrapped in bandages. My face was swollen beyond recognition. A tube ran down my throat, and every breath felt like swallowing fire. My first word, rasped through cracked lips, babies. The nurse, a kind woman named Gloria Thompson, squeezed my hand. They are okay, honey. Minor smoke inhalation, but they are stable. You saved them. You are a hero. I closed my eyes and wept. For 2 days, I drifted in and out of consciousness. Dreams blurred into nightmares. I saw flames every time I closed my eyes, heard my babies screaming, felt the heat on my skin, and every time I woke, I remembered. Jason standing in the driveway, Kate beside him, the car driving away. On the 4th day, Detective Sarah Parker arrived. She was mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a professional demeanor that gave nothing away. She pulled a chair up to my bed and took out a notebook. Mrs. Dawson, I know this is difficult, but I need to ask you some questions about the night of the fire. I told her everything. The locked doors, the sealed windows, the explosion that came from nowhere, Jason and Kate standing in the driveway. They planned it together, I said. They left us to burn. I saw them. Detective Parker wrote it all down. Her face revealed nothing. Then she said, Mrs. Dawson, your husband has been here every day since the fire. He has been sleeping in the waiting room. He has talked to every doctor, every nurse. He has not left except to shower and change clothes. He is lying. He has 6 witnesses who confirm he was at a business dinner until after the fire was reported. Restaurant staff, his business partner, 2 clients. He came back. I saw him. With Kate. The restaurant is 45 minutes away. The fire was reported at 10:52. According to multiple witnesses, your husband was at the table until 11:15. That is impossible. I saw him. He was in the driveway. Mrs. Dawson? Detective Parker's voice softened, but her words were devastating. Smoke inhalation can cause hallucinations, memory distortion. The brain tries to make sense of chaos, and sometimes it creates narratives that feel real but are not. I know what I saw. I believe you think you do. That moment was the beginning of 3 years of hell. Not because I doubted myself, but because I realized everyone else would. When they call you crazy, when they question your reality, when they make you feel like you cannot trust your own eyes, that is a special kind of torture. And I need you to know, your truth is still true, even when no one believes it. The next day, Jason arrived with flowers. A camera crew from the local news followed behind him. Someone had tipped them off. Someone had arranged this moment for maximum impact. Jason appeared in my doorway, his face a perfect mask of grief and relief. Rachel, thank God you are awake. His voice broke. His eyes glistened. I thought I lost you. I thought I lost everything. He crossed the room and reached for my hand. I slapped him. The sound echoed through the room. The camera caught everything. Get out. Rachel, get out. The nurses rushed in. Security was called. Jason was escorted out, looking wounded and confused. The perfect performance. That night, the local news ran the story. Fire survivor Rachel Dawson is recovering at Knoxville General, but sources say the trauma may have affected more than just her body. Her husband, Jason Dawson, who has kept vigil at her bedside since the tragedy, says he is committed to supporting her through this difficult time, whatever it takes. The footage showed me slapping Jason, showed my bandaged face twisted with rage, showed security pulling us apart. The comments were brutal. Poor man, his wife clearly has PTSD. She should be grateful he is standing by her. Some women just cannot accept help. My sister Megan arrived from Nashville and found me sobbing in my hospital bed. They are making me look crazy, Meg. He tried to kill me, and they are making me look crazy. I believe you. You are the only one. Megan held my hand and did not let go. Here is what I need you to understand. Abusers are master manipulators. They control the narrative before you even know there is a story being told. If you are in this situation, document everything. Tell someone you trust. Write it down. Send yourself emails. Because when they try to gaslight you, evidence is your lifeline. I had no evidence, just my word against his, and nobody believed me. 6 weeks after the fire, I hired a private investigator. Marcus Webb was 53 years old, a former cop who retired after his wife died of cancer. He had a reputation for being relentless and thorough. Within 2 weeks, he delivered. Hotel receipts showing Jason and Kate checked into the same room 14 times in the past year. Text messages proving their affair. Financial records showing Jason's gambling debts. And embezzlement. Evidence of the sealed windows and disabled smoke detectors. This is enough to destroy him, Marcus said, spreading documents across Megan's kitchen table. Enough for divorce. Maybe enough to reopen the criminal investigation. I allowed myself to hope for the first time in weeks. I am going to win, I whispered. He is going to pay for what he did. I filed a motion for an independent fire investigation. The district attorney agreed to review the case. I made a mistake that night. I celebrated too soon. I called my mother and told her justice was coming. I let myself believe the system would protect me. 3 days before the independent review, Marcus Webb's car ran off Highway 29 into a ravine. Single vehicle accident. Blood alcohol level, 0.16. Marcus Webb had been sober for 15 years. He went to AA meetings every week. He had a chip in his wallet celebrating 5,000 days without a drink. They killed him. I know they killed him, but I could not prove it. And without Marcus, without his testimony and contacts, the independent review was postponed indefinitely. My evidence became just paper. My hope became ashes. The man who believed me was dead. And somewhere, in Knoxville, Jason Dawson was smiling. 3 months after the fire, Jason filed for divorce and custody. His lawyer was Victoria West, a shark in designer clothes who billed $800 an hour and had never lost a custody case. She stood before the judge with a stack of psychiatric evaluations and a sympathetic expression. Your Honor, my client has done everything possible to support his wife through this trauma. He has visited his children daily. He has offered reconciliation. He has been patient and loving, despite her accusations. Victoria paused for effect. But Mrs. Dawson has responded with paranoia and erratic behavior. She hired a private investigator to surveil her husband. She has accused him, publicly and repeatedly, of attempted murder without evidence. Because it is true, I shouted. Mrs. Dawson, control yourself. Kate took the stand next. Modest dress, minimal makeup, voice trembling with rehearsed emotion. I love Rachel. She has been my best friend since we were 14, and it breaks my heart to see what this trauma has done to her. Can you describe her mental state before the fire? She was struggling, exhausted, overwhelmed. Kate dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. She told me once that she wished the babies had never been born. I leaped to my feet. I never said that. She is lying. Mrs. Dawson, sit down or you will be removed from this courtroom. The damage was done. Based on the evidence presented, the judge said, this court finds that Mrs. Dawson's mental state presents a potential risk to the minor children. Temporary custody is awarded to Mr. Dawson. Mrs. Dawson is granted supervised visitation, 2 hours, twice weekly, with a court-appointed monitor present. The words washed over me like ice water. My babies, the children I crawled through fire to save, gone. I want you to hear me clearly. Family court is not designed to find truth. It is designed to make decisions quickly, based on incomplete information, in rooms where the loudest liar often wins. If you are facing a custody battle, get a lawyer who understands this. Get witnesses who will show up, document everything in writing, and never assume the judge will see through the manipulation. I walked out of that courtroom with nothing. No husband, no home, no children, just rage, and the absolute certainty that I would get them back, no matter what it took. 2 weeks after I lost custody, my sister Megan's brakes failed on a highway overpass. She survived, barely. 6 broken ribs, collapsed lung, traumatic brain injury that would require months of rehabilitation. The accident report said mechanical failure. I knew better. I returned to Megan's house to find the front door unlocked. Nothing was missing, but on my pillow was a photograph. Me sleeping, taken from inside the bedroom, and a note. I told you to stop. You did not listen. Next time it will not be your sister in that hospital bed. It will be Noah and Lucas. Let it go, Rachel, or watch them burn. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror at 3 a.m. I looked at the woman staring back. Hollow eyes, gaunt cheeks, the burn scar along my jaw, like a brand of everything I had lost. On the counter sat Megan's painkillers, enough to sleep forever, enough to make the pain stop. My hand reached for the bottle. I want to be honest with you about this moment. I was done. I had nothing left. They had taken my children, nearly killed my sister, murdered my investigator, and convinced the world I was insane. I reached for those pills because I genuinely believed my sons would be better off without a crazy mother dragging them into chaos. And then I saw it, on the counter where I had left it that morning. A photograph of Noah and Lucas at their first birthday party, cake on their faces, laughing. My hand dropped. Here's what I realized. If I died, they won. My sons would grow up being raised by a man who tried to murder them. They would never know the truth. And maybe someday, when they got in his way, he would try again. I could not protect them by dying. I could only protect them by surviving. I splashed water on my face and looked at my reflection again. Okay, Rachel, you have been burned alive, called crazy by everyone you know, and you are currently standing in your sister's bathroom at 3 a.m. having a conversation with yourself. Rock bottom achieved. Gold star. Now what? I actually laughed. A small broken sound, but real. Now we fight dirty. 6 months passed. 6 months of jumping through every hoop the court demanded. Psychiatric evaluation, weekly therapy sessions, parenting classes, anger management workshops. 6 months of supervised visits with my own children, 2 hours at a time, a stranger watching every interaction, taking notes on whether I hugged them too long or said the wrong thing. 6 months of rebuilding myself from ashes while they watched and waited for me to fall apart. But I did not fall apart. I found a witness. Her name was Denise Cooper. She was a nurse who worked the night shift at the hospital where I recovered. We met at a diner outside of town, a rundown place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been brewing since the Nixon administration. Denise's hands shook around her coffee cup. "I saw your husband," she said, "in the parking garage 2 days after the fire. He was on the phone, furious." "What did he say?" "He said, 'The bitch was supposed to die. Now she is telling everyone I did it. You need to fix this, Kate. Make her look crazy before she destroys everything.'" My heart stopped. You heard him say that. Every word. I wrote down the date and time. I took a picture of his car because something felt wrong. "Why did you not come forward before?" Denise's eyes filled with tears. 3 days later, someone broke into my apartment. They did not take anything, just left a note on my pillow that said, "Keep your mouth shut." I have a 17-year-old daughter, Mrs. Dawson. I was terrified. What changed? I saw your babies on the news. At some charity event with your husband and that blonde woman. And I thought, those could be my daughter. Those could be my grandchildren someday. Denise met my eyes. What kind of person would I be if I stayed quiet? My lawyer filed a motion to introduce Denise as a witness. Combined with the affair evidence and financial records, it could be enough to reopen the criminal investigation. The hearing was set for 3 weeks. For the first time in 6 months, I allowed myself to breathe. "We are going to win this time," I told Megan. "I can feel it. I should have known better. I should have protected Denise." But I was so desperate for justice that I forgot they were watching everything I did. 1 week before the hearing, Denise Cooper vanished. Her car was found at the Knoxville airport. Her passport was missing. A handwritten note, clearly written under duress, said she needed to start over somewhere no one knew her. Police ruled it a voluntary disappearance. But Denise had a 17-year-old daughter. She would never have left voluntarily. They took her, just like they took Marcus, just like they would take anyone who tried to help me. The hearing proceeded without Denise. Jason's lawyer eviscerated my credibility. Custody remained with Jason. Visitation was reduced to once weekly. I sat in my lawyer's office afterward, staring at the empty chair where Denise was supposed to be. What do we do now? My lawyer could not meet my eyes. "I do not know, Rachel. I honestly do not know." That night, I sat in my car in the parking lot and screamed until my throat bled. I hit the steering wheel until my hands bruised. And then I got very quiet, because I realized something important. Playing by the rules was not working. The rules were designed to protect people like Jason. If I wanted to win, I needed to stop being the victim they expected and start being the threat they feared. 18 months had passed since the fire. 18 months of fighting, losing, getting back up, fighting again. I had taken a job as a night shift grocery store clerk to explain my odd hours. In reality, I was building a case that would survive any lawyer's assault. I tracked down the restaurant staff who lied about Jason's alibi and discovered they were paid $5,000 each. I found one of them, a young single mother named Lisa Martinez, and convinced her to sign an affidavit in exchange for immunity. I was making progress, slowly, painfully, but progress. And then I got a phone call that changed everything. "Mrs. Dawson, my name is Derek Cole. I am your husband's business partner. We need to talk." We met at a diner outside of town. Derek was nervous, checking the door every few seconds. "Why are you helping me? You have been blackmailing Jason for months, because he is planning to frame me for everything. I found emails last week, fake paper trails. He is going to throw me under the bus and walk away clean. So this is about saving yourself, yeah. But it is also," Derek paused. "Look, I did not know about the fire. I thought I was just taking money from a guy who could afford it. I did not know he was going to try to kill his wife and kids. Derek slid a laptop across the table. Kate keeps a digital journal, backed up to the company cloud. She uses Jason's login, probably does not realize it syncs to our servers. I opened the laptop, started reading, entry after entry, the affair, the planning, the fire, and one entry dated March 14th. It is done. Jay came back for his phone like the idiot he is, but the house is burning and she is trapped inside. I should feel guilty, but I do not. R had everything I wanted, and she did not even appreciate it. Tomorrow we start our new life. Me and Jay and the baby, the way it was always supposed to be. My hands shook. Baby, Kate was pregnant, miscarried 2 months after the fire. I read further and found something that stopped my heart. An entry from 2 years before the fire. Jay does not know the real reason I wanted R gone. He thinks it is about him, about us. But the truth, R's father destroyed my mother, had an affair with her for 15 years, promised to leave his wife, then dropped her when she got pregnant. My mother raised me alone, in poverty, while Richard Dawson lived his perfect family life. R grew up with everything. I grew up with nothing. And now I am going to take everything she has, just like her father took everything from me. I stared at the screen. Kate's mother and my father's affair, the one my mother found out about just before he died. Kate was my half-sister. I thought the betrayal was about Jason, about jealousy, about another woman wanting my husband, but it was deeper than that. It was about a wound that started before Kate and I were even born. Generational trauma has teeth, and sometimes it bites people who had nothing to do with the original sin. If you are in a situation where you need evidence, here's what I learned. Cloud backups are your friend. Most people do not realize their text messages, photos, and secret journals might be syncing to shared accounts. Check Google Photos. Check iCloud. Check company servers if your spouse works with your friend. Digital footprints are hard to erase completely. Over the next 6 months, I built a team from broken people like myself. Derek Cole, the blackmailer seeking redemption. Lisa Martinez, the waitress who lied and regretted it. Barbara Henderson, a forensic accountant who lost her own daughter to domestic violence and now worked pro bono for survivors. And finally, after months of searching, I found Denise Cooper's daughter, Emma. She was 19 now, working at a coffee shop under a fake name. Your mother, is she alive? Emma's composure cracked. She calls sometimes, from wherever she is hiding. Can you get a message to her? 3 weeks later, Denise Cooper walked into my lawyer's office. She was thinner, grayer, haunted, but she was ready. I cannot stop being afraid, she said, but I cannot live with myself if I stay quiet either. I knew I needed Kate's direct confession. The journal entries could be dismissed as creative writing. The financial records could be explained away. I needed Kate to say it, out loud, on record, so I set a trap. I approached Kate at a grocery store, looking broken and defeated. I am not here to fight. I just want to understand. How did this happen? I thought you were my friend. Kate should have walked away. She should have called her lawyer. But Kate Sullivan had been carrying a secret for 3 years. And secrets are heavy. You want the truth. Kate's voice was bitter, triumphant. You were never my friend. You were my obstacle. I do not understand. Your father destroyed my mother, had an affair with her for years, promised to leave your mother. Then when mine got pregnant, he dropped her like garbage. She raised me alone in a 1-bedroom apartment while you grew up in a nice house with 2 parents who loved you. I played dumb. I did not know. Of course you did not. You never saw anything that was not perfect. Perfect Rachel with her perfect life and her perfect husband who should have been mine from the beginning. Jason was yours. We dated first, before you transferred in junior year with your big eyes and your shy smile. He was mine, and you took him. I did not know. You never knew anything. You just floated through life while everything fell into your lap. Kate stepped closer. So, yes, I planned the fire. I convinced Jason. I made sure every door was locked and every window was sealed. And when you got out anyway, when you ruined everything by surviving, I helped him destroy your reputation instead. You would have killed my babies. Collateral damage. Kate smiled. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. Recording. Kate's face went white, but Kate recovered quickly. Her smile returned, sharper now. You think that recording matters? Check your pocket, Rachel. I froze. Reached into my jacket pocket. A small device, a jammer. I have known you were coming for me for months. Did you really think I would let you walk away with evidence? Kate reached for the phone, and two men stepped out from behind the display shelves. Private security, hired by Derek. The jammer has been disabled for the past 10 minutes, one of them said. We got everything. I looked at Kate's shocked face. You know what is funny? You spent 3 years convincing everyone I was crazy and paranoid. Turns out, I was just thorough. I turned to walk away, then stopped. Oh, and Kate. I never slept with Jason first. He told me I was his first serious girlfriend. Looks like he has been lying to both of us since the beginning. So much for should have been yours. Kate's scream followed me out of the store. The arrests happened simultaneously, coordinated by the district attorney's office to prevent any chance of flight or witness tampering. Jason Dawson was arrested at his office, in front of his employees. He was in the middle of a client meeting when 4 officers in uniform walked in. Jason Dawson, you are under arrest for attempted murder, arson, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent. His face went gray. His carefully constructed life crumbled in real time. There has been a mistake, he said. Call my lawyer. Your lawyer has already been notified, but I do not think she is going to be much help. They led him out through the front door, past 50 people who watched in silence. One woman, a secretary named Janet, who had always brought donuts on Fridays, spat at his feet. Kate Sullivan was arrested at St. Michael's Church. She was walking down the aisle in a white wedding dress, 200 guests watching, about to marry a wealthy real estate developer named Bradley Hamilton, who had no idea about her past. The doors burst open. 4 officers marched down the aisle. Kate Sullivan, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to commit arson, accessory to attempted murder, and obstruction of justice. Her scream echoed through the church. Her mascara ran down her face as they dragged her away, veil torn, dress trailing. Bradley! Bradley! Help me! But Bradley Hamilton just stood at the altar, his face frozen in shock, watching his bride being hauled away in handcuffs. 200 witnesses, 20 phones recording. The video went viral within hours. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Kate's journal entries, authenticated by forensic experts who verified the timestamps and server logs. Denise Cooper's testimony, corroborated by hospital security footage that showed Jason in the parking garage exactly when she said Lisa Martinez's confession about the bribed alibi. My recording of Kate's confession, crystal clear, every word admissible. Derek Cole's financial records, verified by the FBI. And then Kate turned on Jason. He made me do it, she screamed from the witness stand. He said we would be together forever. He said I was the one he really loved. He used me. Ms. Sullivan, control yourself. I gave him everything. I helped him plan it. I watched that house burn. and now he is going to let me take the fall while he walks away. Kate's voice rose to a shriek. No. He was there that night. He poured the accelerant. He sealed the windows. He came back for his phone like the idiot he is. It was his idea. Jason's face went white. His lawyer called for a recess. It was too late. The verdict came on a Thursday afternoon. Jason Dawson. Guilty on all counts. Attempted murder, 3 counts. Arson, insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, witness tampering. Kate Sullivan. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder, conspiracy to commit arson, accessory to attempted murder, obstruction of justice, witness intimidation. The sentencing came 2 weeks later. The courtroom was packed. Cameras lined the back wall. Judge Margaret Thompson looked down at Jason. Mr. Dawson, in my 30 years on the bench, I have seen terrible things, but I have never seen anything quite like this. You married a woman, vowed to protect her, and then tried to burn her alive with your own children to collect insurance money and run away with your mistress. Jason stared at the table. He did not look up. You disabled smoke detectors in a house where your newborn babies slept. You sealed windows that were supposed to be their escape route. You poured accelerant around their nursery. And when your wife, against all odds, managed to escape with those babies in her arms, you stood in the driveway and watched. And then you drove away. The judge's voice was ice. For the attempted murder of Rachel Dawson, I sentence you to 25 years to life. For the attempted murder of Noah Dawson, 25 years to life. For the attempted murder of Lucas Dawson, 25 years to life. These sentences run consecutively. Additionally, 15 years for arson, 10 years for insurance fraud, 10 years for conspiracy, 5 years for witness tampering. Total sentence, 115 years to life. You will never be eligible for parole. The judge turned to Kate. Ms. Sullivan, you were Mrs. Dawson's best friend for 15 years. You stood beside her at her wedding. You held her hand through her miscarriages. You were named godmother to her children, and you repaid that trust by conspiring to murder her. Kate's face was a mask of tears and ruined makeup. For conspiracy to commit murder, 40 years. For conspiracy to commit arson, 15 years. For accessory to attempted murder, 20 years. For obstruction of justice and witness intimidation, 10 years. Total, 85 years. Eligible for parole after serving 40. Kate sobbed. Please, I was in love. He manipulated me. You were a grown woman who made a choice. You chose to help murder your best friend and her children for a man who was never going to choose you. That choice has consequences. The gavel came down. As the bailiffs led Jason away, he turned to look at me one last time. I stood, met his eyes, and I smiled. Not cruel, not triumphant, just free. 5 years later, I stood in the kitchen of my new house packing lunches. The house sat on a quiet street in Nashville. 3 bedrooms, a yard with a swing set, a porch with the rocking chairs. Not big, not fancy, but filled with light and laughter and life. Noah and Lucas sat at the table, arguing about superheroes. Batman would definitely beat Spider-Man, Noah insisted. No way. Spider-Man has webs and spider sense. Batman has money and a cave. Boys. I used my teacher voice. What did we say about arguing at breakfast? That it raises our blood pressure and ruins our appetite, they recited in unison. And Mama already has enough gray hair. I laughed and kissed both their heads. Exactly. Now finish your cereal. The bus comes in 10 minutes. They were 8 years old now. Healthy, happy, full of energy and opinions and endless questions about the world. They knew the truth, age-appropriate pieces of it. They knew their father did something terrible. They knew he was in prison and would never get out. They knew their mother saved their lives. They did not know the details. They did not need to. Someday, when they were older, I would tell them everything. For now, they just needed to know they were safe and loved and wanted. After the trial, I used part of the recovered settlement to start a nonprofit. I called it Rising from Ashes. In 5 years, we helped over 3,000 women escape domestic violence. We provided legal aid, emergency housing, and trauma counseling. I spoke at conferences, testified before lawmakers, appeared on talk shows, not for fame. I hated the spotlight. Every interview felt like ripping open old wounds. But I did it anyway, because every interview might reach one woman who needed to hear that survival was possible. One woman who was being told she was crazy. One woman reaching for pills at 3 in the morning. I refused to let anyone else feel as alone as I did. My face was still scarred. My arm still bore the marks of that window, white lines crisscrossing my skin like a map of everything I survived. I did not hide them anymore. They were proof. Proof that fire does not always destroy. Sometimes it transforms. A letter arrived one morning. Prison return address. Mrs. Dawson. Kate Sullivan died yesterday. Prison fight. I wanted you to know you won. You have the boys, your life, your freedom. I have nothing but time and regret. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I wanted you to hear me say it. I am sorry, Jason. I read the letter twice. Then I walked to the fireplace and dropped it into the flames. I watched it burn. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No closure. No relief. Just emptiness, where the rage used to be. That night, after the boys were asleep, I stood at the window watching the stars. I thought about everything I lost. My innocence, my trust, my belief that the world was fair. I thought about everything I gained. Strength, purpose, a community of survivors who looked to me for hope. I thought about the scars that would never fade, the nightmares that still woke me, the way I flinched when I smelled smoke. I want to be honest with you about something. I did not get a fairy tale ending. I got a real ending. I won, but it cost me things I can never get back. I do not sleep through the night. I have panic attacks in parking garages. I cannot light a candle without my hands shaking. But I am alive. My boys are safe. And every day, I wake up and choose to keep going. That is what surviving looks like. Not perfect, not painless, just continuing. And if you are listening to this 3 in the morning, wondering if you can make it through tomorrow, you can. I promise you can. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And your truth matters, even when no one believes it. Noah appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Mama, I had a bad dream. I crossed the room and scooped him up, 8 years old and still fitting perfectly in my arms. What was it about? There was a fire, and I could not find you. I held him close, feeling his heart beat against mine. I am right here, baby. I will always be right here. I carried him back to his room and tucked him in. Lucas was already asleep, sprawled across his bed like a starfish. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching them breathe. My miracle boys, my whole world. The boys I crawled through hell to save. Here's what I know now that I did not know then. Some fires are meant to destroy you, but some fires are meant to transform you. I walked into that fire as a wife who trusted too easily, a mother who believed in the goodness of people, a woman who thought the world was fair. I walked out as something else entirely. I walked out as someone who knows that monsters wear familiar faces, that the system does not always protect the innocent, that sometimes you have to save yourself because no one else is coming. But I also walked out knowing this. You are stronger than you think. You can survive more than you imagine. And there are people in this world who will believe you, even when it seems like no one does. Find those people, hold on to them, and never, ever give up. The sun was rising outside my window. A new day, a new beginning. I turned away from the glass and walked toward my son's room, whole and broken and triumphant all at once. Because some women do not burn, they rise. If you believe that monsters deserve to be exposed, hit that subscribe button right now. If you know someone who needs to hear this story, share it with them today. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had someone try to make you doubt your own reality? I read every single comment, and your story matters too. Turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this one. And whatever you do not skip a single second of what comes next, because the ending is going to destroy you. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Closing statement. Content disclaimer. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful storytelling and valuable life lessons. Every word was crafted with intention to inspire, empower, and remind you that no matter how dark your situation may seem, there is always a way forward. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of this community. We will see you in the next story.